So it's time to grind. Woo.
That's a lot of bolts.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. On this episode, we are continuing to just hatch away at this electric truck. As you can see in the last episode, we got the cab hung. It's just sitting there right now. But what we have to do now is get it completely centered. And that is a lot of measuring, a lot of lasers.
Frickin' laser beams.
A lot of all the measuring devices. Once we get this thing centered on the chassis table, we have this 1x1 material. And I'm just allowing the pinch rail to sit on the 1x1 material, allowing the cab to just slide side to side and forward and backwards. That will basically make it easier for me to get this thing centered where I need it to be. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tack weld it on these 4 points. Once it's tack welded and the cab is completely locked in place, then we can start making the floor. And I'm gonna utilize these factory Tesla mounting points to make these 1x3 steel supports to go across to start tying the cab into the chassis, tying the floor into the battery to add more support, because these are actually structural in a Model 3. And this is going to create a nice floor for us to build our seats, our floor pan, and our footwell to be able to not have our feet dangling in the wind. So the first thing we need to do is figure out the center of our wheel arch, and this is going to dictate where the cab needs to sit this way. And then it's just as simple as coming around to the corners here, measuring the back on this gap here, on that side, and on the front. That way we have it nice and square. Once that's all done, like I said, we'll tack weld it in place and start cutting our floor in. So let's get to work. All right, we have our cab all welded in. This thing ain't going nowhere. So we cut the floor out on the lift in the last episode, as you guys can see. We kind of just roughed it in. What I have to do now is I have to cut this nice and clean against this rain channel, actually down to where the seam is right here. Get it nice and clean, and then I'm gonna start running my cross braces into this guy so we can start attaching the cab to the actual chassis. All right, so we have the driver's side rain channel or weather stripping pinch rail all prepped and ready to go. Cut back all this meat that was in the way. What we're going to do is once these cross braces are welded in, we'll be able to use this as our point to actually attach the sheet metal floor. So we'll come across here, break a 90, and then we'll probably do plug weld all the way down here, just like factory. We had some rust right here, so we're going to have to replace this panel. But what we're going to do is going to go over to the passenger side now, prep that, get this all nice and clean. That way we can bring our floor braces all the way to the edge here. So when we put our sheet metal on, it's not structural at all, it's just for looks. So I'm gonna head over there and get dirty as well. Cab work is really taking off. We brought in the big guns. Boss man Mikey's putting the floor in this bad boy right now. So what we're doing is we got these 1x3s that's actually gonna create a floor structure for our cab. Now we're going a little differently on this build from a traditional truck, where a truck is the cab, your front core support, and your bed is all bolted to a frame. And basically that's kind of floating on bushings and all that stuff, and it's really loose. We're deciding to do a unibody. So we're going to be tying the cab into our electric truck chassis so that all the suspension, everything you get when you drive in this vehicle is just like a modern car, where you're going to get all of that road feel through the steering and the pedals, and you're going to be able to feel what this thing's doing as you're driving it. So what we're doing right now is we're creating this entire framework. These holes right here are going to be capturing our factory bolt hole positions for the battery. So that's going to get some more support for the center of the battery pack, since this thing weighs so much. We're going to be removing this rear piece to get a little bit more leg room for the bigger guys that are going to be driving this thing, like Mike.
What does claustrophobic mean?
It means he's afraid of Santa Claus. It's scaring him.
Once this is all done, we're going to tack it in place. We'll bolt it in. We're going to start creating our pieces here that are actually going to tie the cab to the frame rail. We're going to be adding some more supports back here and tying this cab all together. Once we have all that done, we'll put our floor in place, some 16 gauge steel, and start making our forward footwell to get our pedals mounted. But for right now, let's continue on with this. We're going to start welding up. Right?
Yeah, that's what he said right there. We're using a 1x2 with an 1/8" wall thick steel, rectangular stock. I gotta actually notch out all these outriggers so that way they sit nice and level from these center supports out to our frame rail here. went ahead and cut all the skeleton of the dash out of the truck. This truck is going to SEMA. It's completely electric. It's one of a kind. So we're not gonna go ahead and skip any steps here in making this thing completely custom. If you've ever driven in a square body, you might know that it's very tight in there. I have a 86 outside. It's very close, you know, there's not a whole lot of room in there. So we went ahead and cut out this whole back section. I think we gained like maybe 6 inches. So now we're able to push our seats back further. And then we cut the dash out. So now we're gonna redesign this dash for our Haltech LCD screen. We're gonna have a really nice iPad with a beautiful center console we'll make here in-house. Right now I'm gonna go ahead and clean up all this primer and get it ready so we can weld to it. All right, so we got our bed rolled in from the donor truck outside. Today's goal is to get this bed mounted on that truck. I gotta fabricate a little support to stiffen up the back end of this bed so it doesn't kind of fold on us. Then I'm gonna sweep out all this beautiful nuggets and maybe clean that bird poop. Then I'll flip it over. Got some supports we gotta cut out down here. Then I'm gonna take a couple different tools, a couple of air grinders, sawzalls, stuff like that. I'm gonna cut around the perimeter of this whole truck, get this bed floor out as close as we can to the actual sides so that we could use this floor once we get it situated back onto our truck, onto the chassis, because we have a C-notch, so that means the stock bed floor height, it will change significantly. So now our bed height's gonna be way up here. I'm gonna go ahead and get that started, and then we'll have to build some of these 1x1 square stock standoffs to mount onto our chassis table, so that way we have a nice flat surface to mount our bed. So I'm gonna get to work. Hi Donnie, hi Andrew. So once I flipped over the bed, I got kind of lucky because I noticed that there was about 75 to 100 half-inch bolts holding the bed sides to the bed floor. So what I did is I just took all the bolts out. I used a little force on my foot here, and I was able to break free all this seam sealer that they use to seal the bed floor to the sides.
That's a lot of bolts.
Craft some metal. So check this out. We have these little doohickey cuts that we had to make to get the cab off, which we butchered to hell, as you guys can see. It's all slotted up. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come in here and square this off, make a box, then cap these, weld it in, and then go ahead and physically tie this rail back in and stiffen this whole thing up. So by the time we're done with it, we're gonna have one nice flush piece. It'll be a first of many thousands of projects to make this one piece. See, now I just made a simple little box. So once I cut this and trim this, this will make it easier to make a template to fit, so I'm not all over the place when it comes to different other curves that we have in there. So this will help me get my fitment a little bit better. So I got these caps, just 9 of them, an 1/8" steel, nothing fancy. But what I'm gonna do next is trace it, cut it, and it's gonna be a perfect fit towards each of these caps because they're different. And then from there, I'm gonna weld the seam, zip, zip, all the way down. Then I'm gonna weld this in and grind it in, and we're gonna have ourselves a nice polished piece of steel here, brothers.
Brother.
And sisters. Ooh. Oh, we got some plates, baby. As you can see here, they're tight. Yeah, that's creepy, sorry. So we got this one. This one's gonna go over here. I'm gonna do a little trim and pull this back, do a little weld here and then, do a couple spatters over here and blend it all in. But I'm pretty stoked. So now, my best friend, acetone. We prepped this surface. I'm gonna physically bead every single spot that I can. I'll blend it in and make this all one piece. We'll have ourselves a nice little showpiece that you will never, ever, ever see. Don't be a jabroni, always acetone, okay?
The cab is finally installed. Donnie's been grinding away. He looks like a mess because he's been working so hard, ladies. Look at those luscious locks. So what do we got, Donnie? You got the back ledge all situated, the floor all done. Mike prepped these all and cut them all for you. Next episode, we're going to be continuing on with the cab mounts. And as you can see back here, what is this? What is? Oh, we got the bed on. It's just kind of sitting there, guys. It's really loose. It's held on with some light bracing just to get it kind of where we want it. We're starting to level it up. This thing is starting to look like a real truck. We're going to start mocking up some exterior pieces, getting the core support fixed. We have that thing just swinging in the wind right now. I'm gonna be working on the front and the back of the truck while Donnie continues on the interior. So next episode, Donnie's gonna be doing the sheet metal. I'm gonna be doing all the bracketry for the bed and try to figure out how we can get an actual bed in the truck. I have a lot of metal work still to do. Chassis is almost complete and this truck is almost ready to start doing some very quiet burnouts, right? So anyway, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. See you later.